Hi, welcome to episode 13 of Data Product Mindset. I'm Anthony Cosgrove, the co-founder of Harbour Data, the private data and AI marketplace platform for governing the discovery, access, and use of data and AI products. Today, I'm joined by Sanjiv Kumar, formerly Director of Enterprise Architecture at Freddie Mac. He's now working in an advisory capacity for a range of AI startups, as well as building AI solutions in financial services and also founding a not-for-profit in the holistic wellness space. Sanjeev, you're a busy man. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time.
Not at all. So you're obviously up to a lot at the moment. Share with us what you're up to and how that's all going.
So after almost 4 decades in IT, and a lot of it is has been in data. So Moody's, Bear Stearns, Freddie, as you mentioned, uh, and Sybase, a while back. And these days, I think the next logical step is AI. Data is the fuel for AI, and it's crazy. The whole thing is just unfolding at a pace that it's very hard to digest for most of the companies. So we're trying to see if, you know, uh, create some sort of a research arm or a lab where we can help companies come up to speed in what they want to do in this space and take the productivity advantage or competitive advantage and things like that.
Amazing. And when we think about data products, obviously you've got a lot of experience in data across multiple organizations. Some of those organizations that sell data, others where you're probably more in a role where you're using it internally. How do you think about data products? And feel free just to give us some examples of ones you've been involved in.
Yeah, data products. I would go on a limb here and just say that it's very hard, even for very deep data professionals. What I've found is data products, that whole mindset doesn't come naturally to people.
Yeah.
And there are reasons, and we can go over that. But what I have in terms of examples, I think one good example is data.gov, where you can find so much information, all open data. So, um, that's almost like a free marketplace. And but on the flip side, market data for financial services has been there for ages. And why people have not learned from that, or if you look in the media, there is tons of data that's the advertisers and the clients use. But for some reason, the culture became just pile data up,
Mm.
right? Instead of thinking about curating and making data products out of data, it was like create a warehouse, create an ocean, create a lake house. I mean, it's like so. I think what I learned was that when you curate, when you define specific boundaries,
Hmm.
far, far, far easier to get approvals from legal and general governance and securities. So much easier. So this was when before we actually took the cloud journey head on.
Hmm.
What I realized was that we wanted to put a what I would call a data product, but we weren't calling it that,
Yeah.
um, onto Azure, and we were just getting so much pushback from uh, you know uh, the regulators, the legal department, the security folks, and when we carved out uh, a very definitive, uh, you know, definition and then prove to them that there is no real risk here, and we have thought through all of it, and that just changed the discussion. That's when I first realized what now we're talking about is a data product mindset. But what
Yeah.
I realized was that when you talk about curated, very definitive and definable,
Yeah.
uh, you know, um, uh, call it data product, right?
So I think there's a couple of like really interesting points you've hit on there. I think one is the your experience and understanding of a data product being like quite old, right? It's been around for decades. You've seen them come and go, but then in certain areas, data products haven't really been a thing. They haven't really been part of the conversation until more recently. And then I think the other bit that's really interesting, just listening to you talk there, was this sort of idea of as you get more specific and precise about the use case that you're targeting, you can actually sort of reduce and mitigate, or in some cases, completely remove risk,
Right.
because you're effectively sharing or commercializing an abstraction of the data. So it might be an insight, it might be a dashboard, it might be some kind of model that's been trained on the data, but it's not the actual data itself. Is that fair?
Agreed. What I find is that um, millions and millions of dollars, and I mean like not tens, probably hundreds of millions of dollars, were spent on data warehouses and then data marts and then data lakes. Um, I mean, we would be far more cost efficient, far more secure. Because if you everybody says data is an asset,
Mm,
then why don't we talk about data products?
hmm
Why do we talk about warehouses? Right? You don't put your crown jewels in warehouses. You just it's see, and there is a genuine problem there. If you and personally, I have 3 decades. Today, even people talk about now virtual warehouses and
hmm
you know cloud warehouses and so on and so forth. How many people are really talking about data marketplaces and data products? The reason is that I think we started looking at it upside down.
Okay.
We spend so much money in just piling up the data that dormant data became a huge problem. At one point, there was a report, I think either um, Forbes or one of these uh, companies said 80% of the corporate data, and we're talking petabytes,
hmm
80% is dormant. That's huge. I mean, and uh, you know what I found, like for example, at Freddie and at Moody's, both had tons of data. I mean, huge amounts of data, but curating it, getting it to making it accessible, making it, really, uh, what I would call like to democratize data.
hmm
It was a very, very expensive effort.
hmm
A lot of projects came and gone, a lot of efforts came and gone. Just data quality.
hmm
Everywhere I have seen, there's so much money that is spent
hmm
because we're, I think looking at it upside down. We have to look at a definable, what is usable uh, product, right? What does the user want? I mean, whenever you create a product, you first define that, right? What data? You just, pump it in,
Yeah.
right? And that has, I think, taken professionals, strategists, senior management down a whole wrong, path.
So what you're kind of setting out is, instead of putting a lot of your data into one place as part of a linear process to then ultimately get to value, start with value and then backfill what you need to deliver that value. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the more difficult part has been that, when you think about applications,
Mm,
thinking about the user, but
hmm
data is in the backdrop. So you just dump it in a place rather than think about this data has become an asset, and where is the value? Where is the use? What shape should we provide it so that it becomes accessible, usable, and something that is of value? Like, for example, if we want more efficient AI and analytics, so I think there is this tendency around data that, oh, it could be this or it could be that, rather than being very specific.
mm. And you, so I don't disagree with your position. I strongly agree with your position. But I guess it's sort of, if I was going to critique it, I guess there's sort of that challenge where it's almost a chicken and egg situation of, well,
Mm.
how do I know even the scope of what I should be talking about with the user in a use case if I don't know what data I've got and if I don't know what data is reliable and usable? And it kind of almost is a preparatory exercise to get all of your data, in a state where it's usable and it's reliable and you know what you've got and you know what you can use and so on. And then you sort of start that process. So what would your challenge back to that be? Like, how would you go and have that value conversation and tease out what those use cases are from the users without necessarily having a full or complete picture of the data that's available and how reliable that is?
See, I think what is happening here is that this question itself comes from uh, a very deep belief that if we have more data, if we have a very broad sense of what we got, then we're better off.
Mm,
However, another not so valued asset in a company is a canonical data model.
mhm,
Not many companies pursue that. They think it's, I mean, I have seen multiple times that a, a bigger picture data model, because, hey, you're doing X, Y, and Z. X, Y, and Z has a data model.
mhm,
You encapsulate it to a couple of levels. It can be simple.
mhm,
Um, Maybe I'm oversimplifying here, but so if you have a canonical data model, I think a lot of companies use that for API design, for example.
mhm,
Why not for data products,
mhm.
right?
And
The question here is, how do we derive value without creating tens, hundreds of millions of worth of a data warehouse or a data lake, where we are just let it just as though if you pour in more data, the opportunity will come eventually.
yeah, no, it's a really great perspective. I remember back in the big data days
Oh
when
yeah.
a lot of like kind of
Yeah.
use cases that were put out as examples of what would happen if you did big data. And I think a lot of it was predicated on this build it and they will come sort of idea. Um,
Yes,
but
I
I
have
think
been there, done that.
that's quite
and,
cool.
and probably paid my salary too. So hey, I'm not complaining here, but I am just I think it has been an eye opener. Like, for example, I'll give you an example, another example. Around 2011, maybe, I actually introduced data virtualization to the company, right? Data meshes came later,
Hmm.
uh, and no takers.
Hmm.
You know why? Because, I mean, the mindset is not there.
Hmm.
I still believe data virtualization, which means data stays where it is. You don't have to populate or create three hops for it.
Hmm.
And but again, every tool needs to be utilized, understanding what the value is and what you can or cannot do with that tool.
Yeah.
Uh, and you know, again, it's like, oh, if I have one reporting database, I can do everything from there,
Yeah.
right? That instead, all my operational data is in so many different repositories. Create a virtualization layer and let it rip from there. And then I think mesh was a little more sophisticated way to democratize data and think about data products. But again, too complicated.
Hmm.
Uh, and that is why I feel the data marketplace kind of simplifies people to think about, data products.
Yeah.
What do you want to give to your end users as value?
Yeah.
Start there.
Yeah.
Then, I mean, a lot of things we do in IT as well as businesses is first figure out what the target is,
Yeah.
then right, and then come to how do I get there?
Yeah.
Why don't we do that in data?
Couldn't agree
It's a very interesting, you know, uh, probably $1 trillion problem here.
more. Yeah. So, so with all that said, I mean, you shared a bunch of things already around like critical lessons that you've learned. So kind of like reducing the scope reduces the risk, which makes it easier to do. Start with the value proposition and work backwards. Don't start with kind of putting everything together and doing the preparatory work and hoping the use case finds you. And I really love that point around getting more data doesn't make that easier. Like actually, perversely might make it more difficult to find the value proposition because you've got this sort of seemingly endless sort of sea of opportunity. Are there any other kind of critical lessons that you've learned about data products that you kind of want to share beyond those?
So, what I found was that um, everyone wants to say data democratization is a thing,
Mm-hmm.
but then go into even a small company. Forget about these big, uh, giant companies where fiefdom is still the way,
Yeah.
right? The data is siloed as well. And that is one of the reasons why a shared data platform, like a warehouse or lake, was thought to be the solution.
Mm-hmm.
But silos can be overcome by this new approach of data marketplaces and data products, probably far more efficiently. Because I'll tell you, data warehouses did not solve the problem of data silos in so many ways that I've learned through the years.
Mm-hmm.
When you enable um, a department or a function in the business and say, hey, can you come up with what you would like to present to the rest of the company as a curated data product,
Mm-hmm.
right? That is the question would create the data product mindset. And
Mm-hmm.
also solve for the data silo problem,
Yep.
right? And I think that is how, because in AI we need to solve the data silo problem. Otherwise, corporations will again have the same challenge. We have the data, but we're not getting the results. We're not getting the value, right? So AI needs data, but we need to think about that more in terms of enabling the data owners to curate that data and provide a data product to the rest of the company, give them the credit,
Yep.
and that way nobody is afraid that somebody else is taking over
Yep.
their function or their data. This is, they are selling it literally.
Yeah. So they're in control and they have agency over their data and they're
And
able to contribute.
right, and they know it, so they will figure out what to do with it in terms of governance as well. So they should be providing quality data, and you figure out KPIs, and make sure that they are accountable.
Yep. Perfect. And again, sorry, you like you're bringing me to the punch on the questions, but kind of where do you see the data product space heading? I mean, obviously you're working with AI startups, you're building an AI solution in financial services. Like, is this about AI and more AI, which you've mentioned already, or is it something else? Like, what do you think this whole space is going to look like in a year or two?
So I would, when I was looking at Harbor Data as a pure play in this space, one of the things that you provide is the ability for uh, data products to be further enhanced in like a private space, in a
Mhm.
space where users could do refinement, enhancement. And I think that's the key. So I feel that eventually AI, because it's the need for data is exploding, from because AI, the model training itself, the better training requires better data, more quality, and the quantity also matters here.
Yeah.
Um, so so there will be companies which will start putting out these curated data sets,
Hmm.
data products,
Hmm.
right? And I think that will become very, very common, that one company is actually doing the model and training, but there's another company which just specializes in providing the fuel to that, through data products.
Awesome. Cool stuff. Well, we're sadly over time. I could sit here and chat all day, but we'll end it there. Sanjay, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a real pleasure. For anyone that's listening or watching, you can connect with Sanjeev on LinkedIn. And if you found this interesting, check out the other episodes on
And
harbordata.com.
thank you, Anthony.
Thank you. Thanks for watching.